Okay, is this thing on? Okay, John? John, are you there? John, unblock your camera so that I can see you. John, if you can hear me, unmute your camera and say here. All right, if your camera and mic aren't working, at least type into the chat that you're here. Okay, good, John's here. All right, Amy, are you here? Just kidding. All right, but welcome to kind of like a day in the life. I was joking around with some friends saying that, taking attendance on Zoom is a little bit like a seance. You're just kind of saying, are you there? Can you hear me? Give me a sign that you're there on the other side of the screen. And so I that's all that pops into my head now when I'm taking attendance with my classes. But in any case, my name is Stephanie Vivas, and I am your child's biology teacher this year. So welcome to biology. This is kind of like new for all of us, this idea of a virtual open house and our hybrid schedules and our different schedules on Wednesdays. But we're really hoping to make the best out of the situation to give your students a really meaningful experience that they enjoy and that they're able to learn and grow from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that I can highlight a couple of things for you. Some are kind of like some typical open house things for you to know a little bit more about your child's teacher. And then some of the things are going to be addressing some of the changes that are particular for this year in our hybrid year. So let me start sharing and then we can get started. All right, so like I said, I'm your child's biology teacher. My students are typically sophomores, and I love teaching biology. I've been here for a while, and the entire time that I've been here at Brookfield High School, I've always been teaching biology, so this is definitely a subject that is near and dear to my heart. But before I came here to Brookfield High School, I went to college somewhat locally here in the state. I went to the University of Connecticut. Go Huskies! Very proud of my alma mater, and I loved my experience there. I was there for a total of 5 years. I did both my graduate and my undergraduate degrees there. The highest degree that I earned at UConn was my master's degree. I earned my master's degree from the NEAC School of Education in Curriculum and Instruction. For my undergraduate degree, I focused on biology with a minor in molecular and cellular biology. So I always like to tell the kids that when we go into things that deal with all the itty bitty inner workings of the cell, that is my jam. That's definitely my forte, and it's something that, I hope to be able to spark interest and enthusiasm in my students. Pretty much immediately after I left UConn, I was hired here at Brookfield High School. So that was 13 years ago. I've been here for 13 years, and for 13 years, I've been teaching the biology curriculum. So it's something that I'm very comfortable, very familiar with, and I'm, kind of like know the ins and outs of the curriculum work that we do together throughout the year. Now, just some kind of like general information. We have a STEM department: science, technology, engineering, and math. And the department head for that is Andrew Hill. He is a wonderful resource if you have any questions about our curriculum, about the classes that students take. I know some parents are even thinking about like next steps, what comes after biology. And he's just a wonderful resource. And the benefit is that because we kind of have that integrated science, tech, and math, he has his hand in a little bit of everything as well. The best way to contact me if you have any questions, any concerns, is definitely through our school email. And my school email is vivas@brookfieldps.org. I've already heard from some parents. I've already reached out to some parents. This is definitely the best form of communication. And now a little bit of trivia, so you never know. Once our world comes back to normal, you might be at like, a Wednesday night trivia game, and you might win trivia knowing a little bit of fun facts. So the first class of Brookfield High School, when did they graduate? And it was funny because I actually met some of the people that came to Brookfield High School the year that the school was open. So the first graduating school from Brookfield High School was in 1967. So you never know, might win some trivia with that one. And then because this is biology and we deal with all things living, a little bit more kind of like living things trivia now, the biggest animal that has ever lived, including, from, whenever life originated to now, that includes the blue whale. So it's kind of exciting for us to think about, this ginormous animal and that we exist in the same planet as this majestic being. All right, so now for some frequently asked questions that are typically addressed at a normal open house. One thing that I'd like to address is that I think of our student success as being a team effort. And so I like to have lots of communication at home with parents. I tend to reach out if I see that students are struggling. And if you have any questions or any concerns, please make sure that you feel free to reach out to me. I treat all of my students fairly, respectfully. I set expectations that, I know all my students can achieve, and I like to think that I set equal expectations for my students. And so I want my students to be able to work hard, to be responsible, to do their part as well, to be able to be successful and to, get something meaningful out of their experience in this class. In terms of just some general Brookfield High School policies, attendance is interesting this year, especially because, we have our hybrid model. So whether the kids are at home or at school, they should be attending their classes. Attendance is taken at the beginning and at the end of every class, which is really important, especially for the students that are at home on any particular day of the week. In terms of cell phones really are not needed in this class. We find that cell phones tend to be a distraction for students, whether they're texting or checking social media or gaming on those cell phones. We really tend to discourage their use. The only exception to that rule is whenever we're playing, a game that has review purpose in class. And sometimes students will ask me, oh, can I use my phone? It's easier for me to click the screen than it is for me to, touch the buttons on the laptop. And in those cases, I'll let the students use their phones. But otherwise, they really should not be out in the classroom. And I'll give reminders to students to put them away before I ask to just keep them for the duration of class so they'll no longer be a source of distraction. In terms of laboratory safety, that is an interesting point of conversation. Under any circumstance, I would say that, we follow just kind of like, the National Science Teacher Association kind of like protocols for laboratory safety. And not that this year is an exception in terms of our safety expectations, but in terms of the labs that we're going to be participating in. So first off, a really popular question that I get asked is, do we do dissections? There are no dissections in bio, but if your students are interested in dissections, anatomy is the class where it would offer those laboratory experiences. But bio, even in a typical year, wouldn't do dissections. In terms of other labs that we typically do throughout the year, we're still trying to figure that out as we go along, to be honest. Just because of the nature of students needing to share equipment, needing to be in close proximity with one another, we need to be mindful of giving a safe experience for students. And then in terms of academic misconduct, because pretty much everything is virtual, it's really important for kids to be responsible, to avoid plagiarism, to avoid cheating. Super easy to like take a screenshot of something, share it with our friends. So we really want to discourage that kind of behavior and instill a sense of, academic integrity. Some more kind of commonly asked questions in terms of grading. Grades are updated twice per month near the middle and towards the end of the classes. In terms of assessments, well, first of all, a typical test or quiz, really, again, we're trying to figure this out as we go along. We want to give an equitable experience, whether students are in the classroom or at home. And I'm fully cognizant of the fact that at home, they're might not necessarily have the same monitoring, or they might have access to different kinds of resources. So to make this equitable, we're kind of approaching this a little bit differently. What students are expected to be prepared for are frequent checkpoints. After we take a look at a major topic in class, they'll have a series of questions to reflect back on it to make sure they understand that topic. There aren't any retakes on that because, again, in order for us to be able to keep these kind of like in terms of equitable for all of our students, and in terms of maintaining some sense of security for the questions so that kids don't see them over and over and over again, we just don't offer retakes. But they're so frequent
that there is really tons of opportunities for kids to be able to increase their grade if they don't perform well on a checkpoint or two. In terms of group work, we do encourage group work. It's interesting with our social distancing, but when they're in the classroom, they can turn and talk to a masked partner. Again, making sure that they stay, in their seats. They're spaced out about 3 feet apart. And then when we do experiences virtually, we're taking a look at the breakout room features in Zoom, such that students are still going to be able to work with partners and still be able to rely on our partner to be able to collaborate, bounce ideas back and forth with, and use them as a resource to help them do this kind of group work experience. And then classwork and homework, which is frequent in class, is all effort-based. I tell the kids, I want you to try. It's a practice opportunity. I'm looking to see that you're practicing and that you're trying your best. I don't necessarily look to see if they're right or wrong, because it's the first time that we're seeing it whenever we're doing these. So it's really the labs and the checkpoints that are accuracy-based grades. And then this year, there are definitely some new FAQs around our hybrid, approach to teaching. So in terms of safety in the classroom, I do teach in a classroom that is equipped with sinks, and that makes it so that students are able to come in and wash their hands. They can wash their hands whenever they want to. That's kind of an expectation as soon as they come in. They sit at desks that are spaced out apart. And I have to remind the kids to just make sure to keep their masks on for the duration of class and to refrain from touching each other, which is proving to be kind of difficult. I didn't, really appreciate how much high school kids like to, flick each other's ears or tap each other on the shoulder, things like that. So we need to remind them to just, kind of keep their hands to themselves. I am cognizant of giving my students a mask break, and whether it's a 5-minute break from the screen when they're at home or a 5-minute break from the screen when they're in their classroom and from a mask. We go outside, the kids can enjoy, a light snack or something like that while we're out there, take a little bit of a brain break before coming back in and continuing our work. In terms of Zoom etiquette, all students are at Zoom at some point during the week. I'm just following the same protocols that, were distributed to school. The expectation is that cameras are on so that we can see that the kids are present during the duration of the class. Their microphones should be muted unless I directly ask them a question. So I might say, John, what do you think of this? Or Alex, do you agree with this? Or even just for attendance purposes, for us to know that they're there. They do have a chat feature that they can use to be able to ask me private questions, or in case, things like their mic and their camera aren't working, we can use that as a backup. It's not ideal, but it is something that they have accessible to them. And something that, is kind of new to a lot of students and teachers alike is using Google Classroom as our main access point in the class. And so when your students log into Google Classroom, they see a whole bunch of classes. So for example, for biology, they would click on that class. And if they're at home that day, here under Stream, they have access to the Zoom link. So they click on the Zoom link, and that brings them straight into the class that we're doing that particular day. Everything else lives here under the classwork tab. So for example, today is the 24th. And today, students took notes on the characteristics of life. So they can click on this, they can open this presentation. This is an interactive presentation that the students would need to complete and fill out. There's questions for them to answer during the presentation. There's diagrams for them to be able to manipulate and for them to be able to label. So again, whether they're at home or whether they're on Zoom, it's really important that they're tuning in so that they are able to complete these presentations as we go along. I'm trying my best to keep this organized to make it easily accessible for my students. So everything is organized chronologically by date. So for example, if they need to go back to an assignment from the 23rd of September, or if they were absent on the 21st, or if they needed to review something. So for example, here is a day that I asked them to prepare for a checkpoint. They're able to go back and they're able to find all of their work fairly easily. So this is really the main hub, and not just for this class, but really for all of their classes. I myself am actually new to Google Classroom, so I'm actually using the students a lot as a resource to say, hey, what are you doing in this class? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? And students, I have to say, have been phenomenal and being a very helpful resource for me for learning how to use this as well. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing my screen. So hello again. If you have any questions or concerns about anything throughout the year, please feel free to reach out and contact me via email. And again, that's vivas@brookfieldps.org. I am looking forward to having a great year with your students, learning about biology, learning about living things, learning about interactions of those living things with the environment, and most importantly, what those things directly have to do with our students. So I hope that they enjoy their time in the classroom, and I hope that they're able to get meaningful experiences out of it as well. Bye.